I don't understand how this happened.
It happens to a lot of people. All the time.
Telling me I'm just like everybody else is not going to bring back my confidence.
Well, what happened? How'd you lose it?
I don't know.
I mean, I woke up one day and all was right with the world. And then I get one unpleasant text message here. Then some obsessive self-analysis there. Then you add in a little bit more conflict. Me probably saying some impulsive words that were not wise. And I remember eating an entire sleeve of Oreo cookies. And here I am, hiding out in my unfinished basement.
Aw, chin up, champ. You're doing great.
That's not helping. Hey, everyone likes you and really, really thinks you're quite above average. Please stop now.
You want a hug?
Nope. Come on. Bring it in. I'm not doing that. I don't need cheering up. What I need is a little honest self-assessment.
Okay. Well, you're not as funny as you think. And you're overly opinionated. I mean, really, people often just agree with you because they're afraid you're going to launch into a lecture if they don't agree with you. And you're more likable because people like your wife so much. Somehow their admiration and their like for her gets projected onto you inadvertently.
Right. Strangely, that didn't help.
Don't worry. You're going to get your confidence back.
I hope so. This is miserable.
Yeah, you'll definitely, probably get it back. I think. Maybe you shouldn't get it all back. A little less confidence is probably more appropriate to your ability and capacity and talent. This might be a good thing. Thanks. We should definitely hug. Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Denver Church of Christ Weekly Recap. It's great to have you here. My name is Chris Zillman, and something happened in the last few weeks that has really called into question many things that I have thought about myself. We had taken a family outing to one of the reservoirs, and just for something to do. And we were walking around, and I had gotten into a discussion with my boys a couple months ago just about if they thought they could beat me in a race. Now, here's the thing. They've never beat me in a race. I mean, that's the first thing to understand. And the second thing to understand is that the last time I raced them, which was last summer, I didn't just beat them. I utterly annihilated them. And so I was brimming with confidence that we'd have the same result. There's not much that can change in 1 year. And so we lined up about 50-yard race, and I had expected from start to finish to absolutely just blow by them. And something was wrong right from the beginning, because right as we started, both my 18-year-old and my 16-year-old were a little bit ahead of me. And so I was like, well, I'm tight. I need to get loosened up. And by the end of the race, my 16-year-old and I tied, and I think my 18-year-old didn't beat me only because when he was trying to pass me, our elbows knocked and he kind of fell off. And so I think my kids are faster than me now. And this brings into question many things that I've always held to be true in this universe. And the first amongst them being that I will always beat my children in physical activities. And now that I can't, because it's not going to get better. I'm not going to get faster next year. It's not like next year I'll get them. I realize that my age really does make a difference now. And I cannot put any sort of confidence into my athleticism. And I knew that that's been falling off for a while, but this was just one of those definitive moments in life where you just call into who you are comes into doubt. Like you just start doubting yourself. And so that's gotten me thinking a lot about this week and about self-worth and self-esteem and self-confidence and all of that. And what does it mean? And do you need it? And these aren't topics I typically like to think about. To me, if you start thinking about doubt, or you start thinking about your confidence, you start questioning it. And the more you question it, the more you think about it, the more doubt you have. And it's just kind of like this feedback loop. And before you know it, you're just a groveling, weak person, not able to get out of bed in the morning. And so I've started wondering, okay, where does confidence come from, and where should it come from, and what happens when you have a blow to your confidence, and how do you regain it, and should you regain it, and what is that all about? And before I ever became a Christian, and this was during this period of time where I was studying the Bible and I was asking questions of God, and I didn't quite always get why he did things the way that he did. And even the call for me to be a Christian and to follow Jesus, I knew intellectually that those were all good things, but I just didn't want to emotionally do it. And all of this studying the Bible made me, I'm having to think about myself and my past and all of that. And it was just kind of this crisis of confidence during that time. And I remember early on in studying the Bible, just trying to find something in the Bible to build some semblance of confidence again. And I came across this verse in 1 John chapter 3. And here's the thing. At the time, like context, what the author was actually intending, those weren't questions I was asking. I was looking for words linked up together that would make me feel better. And I came across this verse, and in 3 verse 16, this is 1 John 3:16, it says, "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us." Now, right away, that just flies right over my head at this point in my life, because I grew up, my parents put me into a private school that was religious, and so this is all stuff that I knew, but it was basically stuff I was desensitized to, and it didn't really mean anything to me. So the idea that this is what love is, Jesus died for me, I don't know Jesus, the story is unique and all that, but it's not moving to me at this point. And it goes on, it says, "And we ought to lay down our lives for one another. If anyone has material possessions and sees his brother in need, but has no pity on him, how can the love of God be in him? Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth." And so this begins to pique my interest a little bit, because it kind of takes me out of the realm of I got to fix something in my thinking, or I've got to hit some sort of internal mechanism to start feeling better. This was more about there's a life that you live that brings you something. There's a way to act, and there's a way to be, and there's things that you do. There's actions that change how you think and how you feel. And so this has kind of started to pique my interest. And then in verse 19, it says, "This then is how we know that we belong to the truth, and how we set our hearts at rest in his presence whenever our hearts condemn us." So now at this point, I'm all ears, because this is all I feel. I mean, this is where so much of my doubt comes from, is me condemning myself, that for mistakes that I've made, thoughts that I've had, dumb things that I've done, the good that I want to do, that I don't do, the bad that I don't want to do, but I do. All of that is playing into the self-condemnation and self-doubt. And here he's about to give this answer for what do we do when our hearts condemn us? And, what do we do when we lack worth, when we hate ourselves? And it says, "For God is greater than our hearts, and he knows everything." And so when our hearts condemn us, we need to go and love other people. We need to give. And furthermore, even though our hearts condemn us, we have to know that God is greater than our hearts, and that he loves us. And, it goes on in verse 21, "Dear friends, if our hearts do not condemn us, we have confidence before God and receive from him everything we ask because we obey." And, so all of the building of confidence, again, that came with learning how to walk with Jesus. And, essentially what the verse is saying is that our hearts condemn us. God can overcome that if we trust him and obey him and live and love the way that we're supposed to. And all of that resonated with me, because it wasn't just some intellectual thing I had to understand. Anyway, my kids are faster than me now. that brings into question, my age, what I can do, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Like the best years are behind me, maybe, and I'm just going to grow old now, and all of that. I don't obsess about it, but when there's a global pandemic and you can't leave your house and you're just stuck with your thoughts for many times, this stuff begins to play a role a little bit. And so there's a book I'm reading by this. I don't want to say he's a monk, but he's been called a monk before. His name's Thomas Merton, and he was a fairly prolific writer, oftentimes just about the role of contemplation in the life of someone who wants to know God. And there's a book that he wrote called New Seeds of Contemplation, and he has this chapter in here where he addresses the idea of self-worth. And it says, in the true Christian vision of God's love, the idea of worthiness loses its significance. The revelation of the mercy of God makes the whole problem of worthiness somewhat laughable for the Christian. The discovery that worthiness is of no special consequence, and then a parenthetical, since no one could ever by himself be strictly worthy to be loved, and to be loved with such a love. And this is a true liberation of the spirit. And until this discovery is made, until this liberation has been brought about by the divine mercy, man is imprisoned in hate or self-hate. And, I love the idea that for a Christian, the idea of worthiness isn't really of consequence, because they understand their place in the universe, and that what makes them special is something completely out of their control. It's not something that they can achieve that makes them special. It's not something that they can do that makes them special. It's not something they could do better or improve or grow in that would make them unique, special, or worthy. God gives you worth, and you have to believe that. And once you believe that, you're free, and you no longer have questions about your self-esteem or about worthiness. And so, in any case, I don't know if during the quarantine, as you've been trapped inside, and as you've been sometimes even just trapped in your own thinking and your own thoughts, if, anxiety, self-doubt, questions of worthiness have come across your mind. They have mine, and I don't typically think about that sort of thing. And, and so I'm grateful for it, although it's been painful. But I think that what I've learned I have to do is I have to get back to being connected to this idea that my worthiness is completely as a result of God's love and who God is and what God has given me, none of which can be taken away by anybody else, and none of which can be measured based on how I do or what I don't do. It's constant. And so worthiness is supposed to be constant. And so even though my kids are now faster than me and I am becoming an older man, past his prime, no longer able to do some of the things that I was able to do, that has no impact whatsoever, or should have no impact on my own thoughts about my worth, because that should come from somewhere else, and somewhere else that is unassailable. A place that no one and nothing and no event and no consequence and no dumb thing I do or great thing that I could do could ever change. And so think on that this week, and in the weeks to come, if this kind of oppressive isolation gets you kind of weird and whacked out in your own thoughts, and I think that's probably happened to everybody. We've got to connect our thinking back to what God has given us, and it's got to remain there. And that's where we become strong, and that's where we become free. So anyway, I hope you guys had a great week. A couple updates. We've talked about changing the name of this format. Right now it's called Weekly Update. But I'm no longer really updating anything, because all the announcements that I've been making were useful in the beginning of the pandemic, and now because everyone is checking their emails and the website, there's really no need for me to make another video with more announcements. And so this has just become something a little different. And so we're thinking about changing the name. I got a great suggestion in the email this week. I don't love the name, but I love the concept. The name is, the idea of in step. So if we called it in step, and the idea that we walk in step with the Spirit, we walk in step with one another, that we examine culture, and is it in step with what we're trying to do? So I like that concept. I don't necessarily love the name, but maybe you do. So give me some feedback on that. In any case, love you guys. Hope to see you soon. I know disciples are starting to get together now and starting to connect more, which is great. I would just ask you to please understand that as far as the church is concerned, we are going to follow all regulations that the local authorities give us as far as meeting together for church events. And, we would ask that you respect that and understand that we are under authority as a church, and we're going to follow that unless, of course, that authority asks us to do something immoral, which is not what's happening right now. So in any case, we love you guys. Look forward to seeing you soon, and have a great weekend. Can't wait for church tomorrow and for good days to come. We'll see you guys.